Good afternoon, and welcome to Midday Muse, the podcast where we have deep discussions about the realities of life that will inspire you as you pursue your purpose. My name is Tanea. I am your host, and I am very excited to have this guest today, Miss Stephanie Lee. And today we are going to talk about the process and progress of being a caretaker and of grieving. And we're going to just have a great discussion about life as it is today. So Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me. No, it's been a long time coming.
Yes, I did. Um, I slid into your DMs like probably a year and a half ago, I think,
Yeah.
asking you about this. And so I was actually I think a commercial came on and I was just like, I need to revisit that.
Mm.
And when you told me you were thinking about me, I was like, this is it. This is
Everything in its own timing at the right time, right?
absolutely, absolutely. So Stephanie, can you tell me first a bit about yourself, who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. So, like you said, my name's Stephanie Lee. Um, Professionally, I am the Development and Communications Officer at the Barclay Institute, which is a really long title for a really big job. Basically responsible for the marketing, communications, um, alumni relations, donor development arm that is being established or reestablished at the school.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But I guess you can say my career has spanned mostly in the marketing field, working for a variety of nonprofits in education, arts, um, yeah, insurance companies, and a whole gamut. But I mostly focus on the nonprofit world. They have a special place in my heart. So, it's good to have landed and, of course, landed back at my alma mater, Greenhouse. Thank you very much.
That's right. Woo, woo. Recipe for them.
EPN every single time.
EPN, absolutely.
So, yes, working at Barclay, it is interesting being on the other side of the fence now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, being a student versus now working there and working with as an adult with people who taught you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. And but you get to a point where you realize, we're all adults at this point.
Yeah.
Um, we come into our own selves and learning to respect each other um, as adults. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's
Um, Outside of that, I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, I work. Well, we know each other through, I guess, life and whatnot.
mm-hmm.
The other parts of my life, I am the founder of an organization called Women Who Own and Manage Businesses for Bermuda, which is a support group for female entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
which started sort of, God, it's been that long, almost 10 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. It was during an empowerment workshop, we'll say. And, the panel was discussing, entrepreneurship, female entrepreneur, or not necessarily just female entrepreneurship, but just entrepreneurship. And it was during Women Entrepreneurship Day, I believe. And you know how you go to these conferences and they talk about, building your business, the inspiration behind the business, some of the technical aspects of running a business, some of those struggles. But then it got personal, where the panel discussion was talking about how difficult it was with life and running a business, but also the unique aspects of being a woman running a business.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these women were talking about, you know, getting divorced, the struggle of being a single parent. Um, and, you know, you felt the energy in the room, and the room was packed. Um, and people were asking these questions from their own personal lives about, to the panel on, how do you go from being a two-parent income home to a single parent? And as an entrepreneur as that. So you are 100% responsible for everything
Mm-hmm.
now, how do you manage laundry, you know, getting breakfasts and things. So it got really, really personal. And I looked around the room and I'm like, at the time, it didn't seem as though there were safe spaces for women, especially to talk about not just what it means or what it is to run a business. We have plenty of options and opportunities for that, but what it means to be a woman running a business.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes as women, we go through a whole bunch of different things. Like, I'm glad the conversation about PCOS, PMDD, and all the rest of it is now becoming norm and mainstream. Mental health concerns or issues and whatnot, those are all now becoming mainstream. But at the time, there wasn't, or at least from what I saw, locally, there weren't a lot of safe spaces for people to talk about those sides of things and
Mm-hmm.
also what it means to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of where it started, and came through, yes, also options and opportunities for women to talk about their business and their inspiration behind it and networking and whatnot. But that was the core of it. It's
Mm-hmm.
how do we break down the stigma that that separates us, perceived and real.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get outside of this crabs in a bucket syndrome to have these conversations to realize that, the CEO of Ace XL, whomever, I don't know if it's female now, but you get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
These the CEO, female CEOs who run these multi-million billion dollar corporations have some of the same struggles as the owner of your favorite hair salon
Yes.
down the street, you know? So how do we connect these type of people to realize that they have like they have more similarities than they do differences?
Mhm.
So that was the purpose behind Moon. Yeah.
That is amazing. That's
Yeah.
awesome. And it's one of my favorite speakers who just happens to be my godmother, Dr. Cindy Trim. She speaks about
Okay.
how your purpose is built out of challenges that you have. And
Hmm.
being able to find, it's very important to see a need and fix a problem. And that's how you thrive and survive in business. That's awesome. I'm sure it's very well needed. And I'm sure it's very popular as well.
The group, we're running around 800-ish
Wow.
women well, Bermudian women or women who live in Bermuda are Bermudian.
Hmm.
Also, not necessarily Bermudian, but women who live in Bermuda, but
Okay.
also Bermudian women who live outside of Bermuda as well.
Okay. I
Yeah.
like it. I'm gonna definitely get you to give some more information towards the end about how to join and things like that. Sounds
Yeah,
like
sure.
that can be taken international for sure.
Well, we're in a we're in a season of restructuring.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, today's discussion, I wanted to speak with you about, so you were married, you were actually married to my high school friend.
Yes, 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 my Bubba.
Oh my God. His laugh. His laugh. I will never forget. We were in math class.
Infectious.
Yes, yes. We had our math class together, Mr. Smalls, I believe. And is he still at Barclay?
No, he was actually my math teacher as well. And after I left, because I was a few years behind you guys,
Hmm.
uh, I think he was there for maybe another year or two and then moved to Australia. We actually kept in touch.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, over the years, it's been like on and off, like through LinkedIn and whatnot,
Mhm.
random things. But yeah, last I heard, he was still living in like Australia, New Zealand, um, still teaching.
Um,
Yeah. So,
it's the smallest. Math was not my subject, I'll tell you that.
but
English.
he was a great one.
He was a good teacher, yes, but I'd rather essay any day. Just don't actually. I don't know what 3 times 8 is. I'm not sure. I flipped over the composition book and looked at the timetables in the back. That was me.
You know what? That's what if we have to do what we have to do, right?
But if you need an essay, I
You know
got
who to call.
you.
Miss Sandra Burrows.
Oh, she was my favorite teacher. She was so
She's still there.
hard. She was hard. And it's funny, her mother was my favorite teacher in primary school. She was my pre-7 teacher,
Oh,
Mother Miss Smith. And she was my favorite teacher. And then they came to Berkeley, and everybody talked about how hard Miss Borges was. And I
mhm.
loved her. Loved her. Yeah.
Miss Burrows was a deputy when I was there, so I didn't actually sit in her classroom.
Okay.
But she is now back in the classroom, and still same thing. Miss Burrows is the hardest, but the best one, prepared you for everything, and
Yes.
so
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Definitely a teacher at heart. Yeah.
Work it, finding something you love, and you never work a day in your life, right?
That's the truth. That is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal too.
That is the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were a few years behind me.
Yes.
Um, so tell me, how did you meet Ali?
Oh my gosh. So I actually met one of his sisters in
Okay.
primary school. And we were best friends in primary school.
Okay.
So I knew the other sister directly under him, the sister that I was friends with, and then the two younger brothers.
Okay.
So we were all at Pedra Primary at the same time.
Hmm.
Ali was there as well, but he would have been in P7 when I was in P1.
Okay.
So, or something like that, P7, P6, something like that. Um, so, there wasn't really an opportunity for us to really meet. And so by the
Yeah.
time I met his sister in P2, he was gone.
Hmm.
So I've known the family pretty much my entire life.
Okay.
He and I just had never met.
Okay. Yes, because you were taking naps still,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, pretty much. And ironically enough, some of the other older siblings, Dr. Akbar Lightbourne
Mm.
specifically comes to mind, also went to Berkeley and was friends with my brother, also
Mhm.
also one of your friends,
Mhm.
in high school. So it's always been like this sort of circle family connection.
Yeah.
But again, he and I had just never met. So it was March, March 2019, and Rakaya, the sister, had invited me to a baby shower.
Mhm.
And so, I go. And her family, friends, it was a co-ed shower. So, anybody and everybody was there. Um, and ironically, a baby had been, so one of the other brothers had just had a baby as well.
Mhm.
And so everybody was playing past the baby, right? This baby ends up in my arms. And I guess immediately just falls asleep because, after 15 being passed around, this newborn is exhausted.
Mhm.
So he comfortably sat in my arms and we were playing one of those baby shower games. And I can't remember what the question was, but I had answered it in some type of way, I guess. And then behind me, I hear this voice pipe up behind me saying, "Who said that?" I whipped my head around, being all smart and sassy, looked this person dead in the face like a challenge and said, me, and what? Went back to pay attention, listening to the games or whatever. Still baby in my arms and everything else. I didn't know who he was. I honestly didn't even know whose baby this was.
That is hilarious.
But he was comfortable and I wasn't going to move him. So time goes on, mom comes to claim the baby, and baby shower starts winding down. I help clean up and whatnot. And talking to the family and mom and Rue and sisters and everybody else and other people who I knew at the party.
Mhm.
And I see the same guy sitting there with this paper mustache thing because it was a little boy. Shaw was her little boy. And we started talking. Um, packing up, cleaning up, whatnot, and then, we go about our business. The following week was an event, and we happened to be at the same place again at the same time. I was waiting for a friend, and Ollie happened to be bartending. I was talking to another friend of mine. Ollie comes up and starts talking to the same individual. And I look at him and I'm like, you don't know who I am, do you?
Mm.
Now, as you see, I'm a glasses wearer, but every so often I would wear contacts, right? So I'm guessing the change between the glasses and the contacts threw him off.
Mm-hmm.
So he looked at me and it's like, what do you mean? Now, my friend's baby shower happened to be at the regiment. This other event was at the regiment as well. So I'm
Okay.
like, well, we were just here last week. Totally confused. Anyhow, he eventually put two and two together. My friend shows up. We go about our business. We go up for a drink. She decides to be smart and sassy, and he is very sassy back.
Yeah.
I'm just like, you know what? It is what it is. Now, this was a pre-party, so now we're all getting onto the bus to go to the actual event.
Mm.
We're all, my friend and I, we went together. We're there having a great time, whatnot. She wants to go outside and get some pictures. Go outside, get some pictures. Then this person comes toddling up. Nuisance. And injects himself into the situation. Um, he went, trying to push getting some pictures. So, like I know him, but I don't know him. So it's a little awkward.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but eventually we get a picture of the three of us, um, which, to be honest, is fantastic because the friend I went with has also passed.
Oh, wow.
Right. So that's like she was there pretty much the night our romance started.
Wow.
And to have that picture, wow,
Yeah.
to have that picture, you can't put a price on it, you know?
That's great.
So eventually, have our fun, and he asks for my number. And because he is one of my best friends, big brother, he was safe.
Mm-hmm.
I give him my number. Go home. Now, if you know parties, they don't end until like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't get home. It's early, early in the morning. I say to myself, anybody who calls me before noon is not going to get a very nice me. Why this man call me at 8 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah. Mm-mm.
I thought something was wrong, like he had left something. I can't remember the conversation, but that's how it started. And I do remember us being on the phone basically for the rest of the day.
Wow.
Um, just talking, getting to know each other, just life, I guess, conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Gosh, details are a little fuzzy now in the time sequence. But I want to say we did talk that weekend. Um, he happened to be off as a customs officer, so he happened to be off and had some time. Um, as an entrepreneur, my time was flexible, but I was working with a few clients at the time as well. Um, and I think the moment or the time that I guess sealed the deal for me was I happened to have a dinner voucher and I went for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, let me see who's available. Called him and said, hey, do you want to come for dinner? And it's like, yeah, but I'm on my way home. And at the time he was living in St. David's.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it's okay, I'll wait. I have nothing else better to do. My guy turned around in his uniform and came back into town and had dinner with me. We shut the place down.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, this was a different night, but we shut the place down and he gave me a book. So I was struggling with some situations at work.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, he had the book in his bag. And it was coincidence or fate enough that he had two copies of the exact same book.
Wow.
So he gave it to me. Another time, and I guess this would be the time that's really sealed it for me. Was a birthday part. Well, his birthday. He wanted to celebrate early. Um, I had other plans, but I joined them for dessert. And then we all went out later. And I actually wasn't feeling that great. I wasn't even going to go out, but I felt well enough to go, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then after a while, like after dinner, we went out, hanging out, dancing, whatever. Um, but party calmed down, and so we decided to go for a walk. This man, I have never laughed so hard before or since. It was so bad. I had to sit down to catch my breath. The police came by. Obviously they saw this person and they slowed down because you know how they do and make sure that there's nothing going on.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, it's fine. Because I was sitting down, bending over because I couldn't catch my breath. I was laughing so hard. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, no, it's fine. I'm just laughing so hard.
Wow.
Couple of days later, he insisted on having dinner with my parents before they traveled. Insisted. He wanted to meet them.
Mm.
They went away the following day after dinner. They were gone, I think they were supposed to be, yeah, no, they were gone for a week. I want to say 2 days into the conference, I'm at home. He's with me. And I'm in bed. I needed a no day, just to not. And he's like, let's get married. And everything in me was like, yes.
So
At this point, we're like 3 weeks.
I, that was my question. What are we talking about? Because I heard a
I
week and
love.
2 days and three
Yeah,
weeks.
yeah,
Wow.
3 weeks. And yeah, so about, yeah, 3, 6 timeline. I'm working on the timeline. Because had he had his birthday? He had celebrated his birthday early, but he hadn't, it wasn't his actual birthday, or maybe it was. I can't remember. It was somewhere in like that early, or between mid-April timeline. So if
Mhm.
we met like the middle of March, now we're looking at the middle of April. I freaked out because I had just introduced this man to my parents 2 days ago. And so I called them and I told them. My mom was like, I need to tell you right now. It's not like, calm
Goodness.
down, mom. You have time.
Oh my goodness.
And my dad, he was like, already? So that was that. June 6th, we had a beautiful, very intimate, very small wedding at Scour Hill. Literally, the two of us, our minister, at his insistence, this was the man he wanted to marry us.
Okay.
Our our two witnesses and his mom. So there was 8 people at our wedding.
I love it.
It was amazing.
I love it.
Um, at the time, the plan was to, at our 1 year anniversary, to do the wedding so that we could invite all of our friends and family or whatnot.
Mm.
And it was crazy incredible because we went and had a sat down dinner in a full restaurant. So here I am walking up in my white dress and my full on wedding gown for my wedding dinner. And people are like, oh my God, congratulations.
That's so funny.
Amazing. It was beautiful. And just like no stress, no drama, no, well, a little bit of drama, but that's my dad. Craziness. He went to the hospital and didn't tell me.
Oh no. On the
Yeah,
day?
on the day. So yeah. So that was really the only drama. And yeah, like the most perfect day ever. So that was the beginning of my marriage
So how did you know? You said everything in you said yes. How did you know?
because nothing said no.
Mm, nothing said no.
Nothing said no. Um, and other, I guess, previous relationships or whatnot, there was something
Mm-hmm.
that held some sort of reservation or wasn't 100% or, something you thought you could work on. But nothing. I think back now and I couldn't see any issues or red flags or, well, things that didn't, more like beige flags. You,
Right.
you could say beige flags. Um, Even the fact that he was reconnecting with Islam
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not Muslim
Mm-hmm.
was not a huge deal for me. I was more concerned about, and I've always been this way, I guess you can say, um, your connection with God.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if you pray 5 times times a day. Allah is God in Arabic. Let's
Mm-hmm.
get that straight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, it, and I guess at the time, also a bit of ignorance in my part, seeing my friend and how she was raised, her belief systems and whatnot, and that's why we've been friends all these years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and knowing the family. So having this person in my life or come into my life and knowing the family and knowing my friend, and the morals and ideals and whatnot, and how much it just nothing said no.
Mm.
So, I mean, what was there to wait for? You know,
'Cause, yeah, well, your timeline was 3 weeks. It really was a lifetime because
essentially,
you had known this man through osmosis your entire life.
pretty much, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
wow. That is so beautiful.
So I met and married my husband in 3 months.
Wow.
It can happen.
It can. I'm looking
It
forward
can
to
happen.
it personally. I don't really want to waste a whole lot of time. But that is so beautiful. So
Yeah.
you're just married, you're getting to know each other. When did things first start to shift into a season of him not being his healthiest?
Well, he had told me some of the medical concerns that he had been going through for a better part of his life.
Okay.
Um, and maybe this was my euphoria, my bliss, that it just didn't settle into my brain as it probably should have.
Mm-hmm.
He had told me that he had heart concerns or heart issues, that he was pre-diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, you know him, but he was never a small man. 6'3", 350 at the time, I think, when we married. Um, and well, being a customs officer is a very stressful job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you ask anybody in sort of security or national security, police officers, anybody who works in military, they'll tell you that, sometimes the scheduling of the sleep is also does a toll to not only your physical health but also your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he at the time when we met, he was seeing a therapist as well to deal with some of the other issues that he was going through.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, those were all green flags.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you recognize some of the things that you're experiencing, you're seeking help for it, and you're trying to improve yourself and trying to do better.
Mm-hmm.
He was also working, yes, as a customs officer. He was still working at the hospital at the time, and that's another connection. As an orderly, ironically, I think he was my mom's orderly when she first got sick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because when they met, she was like, I vaguely recognize you. My dad, who would have had the memory, same thing. Orderly for some other family members. And at the time, he was also considering re-enlisting back at the Bermuda Regiment.
Okay.
And so to do that, he had to work on other aspects of his health.
Yeah.
So, these were all green flags to me. So I don't know, maybe the multitude layers of, normal life work stress, being the eldest sibling of his mom's children, um, going back to work, having your entire world shift by meeting and getting married in 3 months, getting to know another person, those 6 months that we had, we're going through the trials and tribulations of what it means mm, to live with another person,
Yeah.
and also getting to know them, um, and their own peculiarities, you
Mm-hmm.
guess you can say.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I can say I never saw it coming.
Wow.
I there was, to me, it didn't, and again, maybe that's ignorance, of not knowing what to look for, not knowing what all of these different pieces
Mm-hmm.
meant. ultimately, and how that ended up affecting him.
Mhm.
So, mid-December, it was late. We were going to bed late. It's actually, one of the few times, because again, customs officer, shift work there. And he told me right from beginning that there might be times where we might not see each other for a couple of weeks just because of
Mhm.
work.
Right.
If I'm working during the day, he's working at night. By the time I get up, he's just getting home. And by the time I'm ready to go to bed, he's going to work.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, but it was one of those times where I can't remember if he was off or, the schedule, it met so that we were actually able to go to bed together. Um, and I remember it was late, and cold because it was December
Mhm.
in Bermuda, and it can get pretty damp
Yeah.
in Bermuda. So I had put the heater on, trapped all the air in and whatnot, and I was just dozing off to sleep, and all I hear is a thump, and then I feel him start to slide off the bed,
Oh my God.
and I'm like, "Bubba, you okay?" Because I was just nicknamed Bubba, and turn on the lights. I go around to him, and I'm looking at his face, and he's like, he can't look me in the eye.
Mhm.
I see the face droop. He can't speak, but he's able to make out a few words. And one of the things was like, "I'm fine, I'm fine. Hot, hot, hot. I'm fine, I'm fine." I'm like, "You're not fine.
Mhm.
This is either a heat stroke, because admittedly the room was very warm,
Mhm.
or a stroke.
Mhm. Mhm.
So called 911. I'm like, "It's either a stroke or a heat stroke. I don't know, but you all need to come."
Mhm.
Open all the windows, put a cool compress, not cold, because I know that can cause other issues.
Mhm.
And tried to get some water into him. Luckily, we were living in town, so it didn't take the emergency services that long to come.
Mhm.
So I want to say we were at the hospital, and I drove behind the ambulance, ironically. Um, well, it did, well, because he couldn't walk, and again, being a big man, we were living upstairs. It did take the emergency services. We had fire and ambulance guys come, and they had to lift him down the stairs
Mhm.
into the ambulance. Um, so that took some time, but I want to say we were at the hospital within hour and a half.
Okay.
Within an hour and a half. Go through the process. So much of it is a blur. Um, and that's when they said he's had a stroke, and because of his youth, would have been 37 at the time, I
Mhm.
think. 36, 37. Jesus. And his brain is swelling. Well, pretty much within, I want to say, and that would have been like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. I call the place I was working at the time, call his boss, and I'm like, "He's in the hospital. They want to airlift him out." So we got there late that night. So yeah, like 12 throughout the day, I'm running around freaking out, because on an air ambulance, you can't actually take a lot of things.
Mhm.
If you've had the misfortune of having to travel on one, you can't take a lot of things. And it's the middle of winter. They're talking about sending us to Boston. And I'm like, I need clothes.
Right.
He needs clothes. I have no idea how long we're going to be there, but I can only take a bag that's literally like smaller than a carry-on.
Mhm.
Finding his passport, couldn't find his passport, found his passport, it's expired, found my passport. Gosh. One blessing is that he was born in the United States. Um, so he had his American passport, didn't have his Bermuda passport. But of course, like they'll let you into the United States with an American passport,
Yeah.
but getting out was a little bit more tricky, but come to that. So we were air rushed out to Boston. He has never really been a huge fan of flying, as he told me, but I think being able to distract him with a few things, some games, we were playing Thumb War for a little while. We were chatting. He was making me laugh. I was trying to make him laugh. So he was still there.
Mm-hmm.
He was still there, still cognitive. Um, got landed into Boston, and unfortunately, coming off the plane, the emergency services dropped him a little bit.
My God. Uh,
Eventually, yeah, got him into the ambulance. We're going off to Leahy. Um, the medical concierge locally, they arranged everything, everything. But the only issue was the hotel. If today was, or, that the day was the 11th, they wouldn't be able to book us in until the 12th.
okay.
Right. Um, so by the time we got into Boston, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. Got into Leahy, got into their, oh goodness, goodness, the highest level. I can't call it. I can't remember what it's called. ICU. That's what it is.
Okay.
Right. Got him settled. I called the hotel. I'm like, is there any possible way? Because now it's the next day. Now it is the 12th.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, look, I'm here. He's settled. Is there any possible way? It's like now 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. That I could let you have a room available. And they're like, unfortunately, no. So, I asked the hospital and I'm like, is there anywhere for me to lay down, nap, get to sleep? Because at this point, I'd been up for 36 hours, you know? And they're like, well, we have a waiting room that you could, sleep in.
Mm-hmm.
So I pull off the couches, off the mats from the couches and whatnot, lay them on the floor, grab a couple of hours. Thankfully, I think only one person or one group came in, um, saw me sprawled out on the floor, and they left me alone, which I guess they could think whoever it was or whatever it was,
They just knew.
they just knew.
Yeah.
God. Got into the hotel, managed to get another couple hours and go back. I don't recall if they were able to administer a clot buster or anything like that, but basically he was in Leahy in the ICU for, I want to say, like 10 days
Mm.
to monitor the swelling of his brain and everything else. Then he was in the second level down for another 4 or 5 days. And then they released him to an intensive rehab facility in Boston,
Okay.
where he stayed for another month or so.
Okay.
And if you're thinking of the timeline, that was our first Christmas together.
So this is all within that same year then we're talking about.
Yeah.
My God.
Yeah.
My God. So while you're going through all of this, What are you learning about yourself as you're going through all of this with your husband, your brand new husband?
What am I learning about myself?
Mm-hmm.
That I'm good in a crisis. You know, I mean, yes, I have my moments of freaking out, of panic,
Mm-hmm.
of crying, of hysteria, but when he needed me
Mm-hmm.
to be solid, I was able to be solid for him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, many, one of the first things I did was find the closest store, and luckily there was a Target across the street from the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was able to get some melatonin. Because I just knew sleep was not going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I can say that was probably the beginning of my own acknowledged struggle with depression,
Mm-hmm.
of probably developing, I don't even want to say, well, probably going through that and now living with the after effects of being a caretaker and watching your husband, your brand new husband, like you said, go through this twice.
Mm.
He had another stroke after that.
How long after the first one?
7 months.
So you guys were just catching yourselves,
He was about to go back to work,
and then it happened again.
and it happened again. You know, developing, I mean, I probably always dealt with some level of depression or, yeah, depression and anxiety for the most better part of my life, but I think this is probably the first instance where I'm like, this isn't right. This isn't fair.
Mm-hmm.
And acknowledging the depression, the anxiety, and now the PTSD.
Mm-hmm. But as far as the PTSD, what is it that mostly triggers the trauma response? Are you wondering what it's like when you start to feel a little happy and what happens next? Or where does your anxiety fall when it comes to that aspect?
I think, well, we'll shorten the timeline a bit to give you the full story.
Mm-hmm.
So, first Christmas, we come home and begin the beginning of my caretaker journey or my caregiver journey, and the changes in Ali. The first stroke, he was more of himself. After the first stroke, he
Mm-hmm.
was closer to the person he was, the man that we all knew and loved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The first stroke affected him more physically. There were some mental changes, but that also could be his own struggle,
Okay.
the results from his own struggle.
Yeah.
The second one affected him, his behavior,
Mm.
mostly.
In what way?
he became someone I didn't know.
My God.
He, and I want to preface this by saying I miss him. And I love the man I married, but he was not the man I buried.
My God.
And I want anyone who knew him to hold on to those memories of the man we all loved.
Mhm.
But he was not the man I buried. He was not in his right mind. He wasn't able to take care of himself.
So you're bathing, you're feeding, you're dressing, while a personality that you have no idea where this comes from is taking over the household.
And I think the hardest part for me was that he was ambulatory. So, he could walk.
Mhm.
He could move.
Mhm.
He For every appointment, he fought me. Like, if his doctor's appointment was at 12, had to move, basically try to get him up and ready by 10.
Mhm.
I had to make sure that, I was fed. I had stopped working at this point. I wasn't working. And, but I mean, working in the sense that I wasn't going into an office. I had maybe one or two clients that were very low key,
Mhm.
and it was now COVID.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you would think that, somebody who is able to move would be able to do things for themselves.
Mhm.
But the strokes did affect his physicality. So there were things, having to sometimes literally push this 6'3", 300-pound man up out of a bed, using my own body weight to lift him up, ensuring that he ate according to, the nutritional guidelines that all the doctors told him to,
Mhm.
no salt, no preservatives, clean foods, but fighting because he wouldn't eat any of it. Else, he was, trying to move him physically, and he was, fighting me on it. I would get him up, and, he would lie back down because, stroke stroke kills brain cells. And even though these appointments were for him, his physical therapy, doctors, neurologists, he, he was fighting. He was fighting for life. But I think somewhere in his subconscious, he was tired.
Right. Yeah.
So, going through all of that, going through COVID, um, I took up part-time work closer to the end of COVID, bartending, to make sure we stayed in the black,
Mm-hmm.
pay for all of the medications, and just like making sure that we were able to survive. Losing friends, and, still trying to encourage his friends and family to come by or call him to keep his spirits up. While at the time, I could see no end in sight,
Mm.
that this was going to be the rest of my life.
During this time, did you have support? Did you allow support for yourself?
We, my parents helped as much as they could.
Mm-hmm.
His mom helped as much as she could. She also had a husband and two more school age children.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to reach out to all of the services that I could. Um, Professional caregivers. I tried to call to find out how me being his primary caregiver could get some sort of, even because I'd heard in some other places that, they could pay you for it. And I'm like, it's
Mm-hmm.
payment so that we can survive.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't exist. And his insurance wouldn't cover a caregiver because he was too young. And there are no care facilities on the island that take people under 50. And he wasn't sick enough to go into hospice.
My God.
So having conversations with, I mean, even like, Maui, everybody. They put me on antidepressants. I was suicidal.
I can
I
imagine.
didn't like the way they make me felt. They cause more anxiety in my body than anything.
Yeah.
And just talking with some psychologists and the therapists and what was going on. And I, towards the end, having to call the police on my husband. multiple times. So I was so scared.
Oh my God.
And they couldn't or wouldn't do anything. Oh, well, it's the stroke. It's the stroke. Okay, yes, so if his behavior is like this and I'm scared for my life, can't you do something? And one of the doctors was like, the next time he has to come in for something medical, please let us know so that we can possibly try and do something.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I insisted on getting or having him go back to Leahy for a neuromedical psych.
Mm-hmm.
And that took time. There were times he was up, he was my husband, he was my Baba. And other times he wasn't. And that last time at Leahy, when he did get the neuromedical psych, he was in a depressive episode, so he was just sad.
Mm-hmm.
And the evaluation was meant to only take a couple of days. We ended up having to stay for an additional day, which, anyhow. And, God, trying to get him to eat, was holding food in his mouth, just wouldn't chew it or swallow properly. He had put, like, throughout the entire episode, he was up and down, fluctuating weight, and which of course made movement more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And at this last trip, he had put on weight very rapidly, which concerned me. So he had to move around in a wheelchair. And by the time we got back, the doctor had given reports to say that it's possible that and she couldn't tell because, of course, she didn't know him before,
Mm-hmm.
but it's possible they could have maybe triggered, or maybe he had before, some type of bipolar disorder. So having this information now, I'm able to say, well, that makes sense. There's reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm able to forgive him.